Well, howdy folks. Today we have a cut of meat called, oh gosh, what's this called? It's the, oh yeah, that's right. It's the plate. Sorry, there's a bunch of different types of ribs. Anyway, plate ribs are really, really low on the cow. Pretty much close to the breastbone. If you can see it, it's, if we have a stuffed animal, if here's the cow and this is its head, it's right down here, kind of just behind the shoulder, very low onto the cow. So that's what this cut of meat is, and you can kind of see it. You see the cross section? This is a very fatty cut, but it's very tough. So you can see there is some marbling through the cooking process just because it's a tough cut. We have to cook it low and slow. That's all going to be gone. But it's going to have a really good beefy flavor. It takes a while to cook it. In fact, a lot of times it's part of the brisket. I think if you were taught in the English or British way of butchering, this usually is part of the brisket. So let me see. What do you think? Okay, so this is pretty much how it was situated on the cow, I believe. Yes. And it's kind of way on the underbelly, and the brisket is going to be right up here, where basically what you would think of as a shoulder is. So that's where this is pretty much like a brisket flat, or the end of a brisket flat. So what we're going to do, we're going to carve it up. As you see, there's a big fat cap on top. You can keep it. Personal preference, I don't. A lot of people think that the fat on there keeps it moist. It's not true. What keeps it moist is, number one, steady temperature, and number two, don't overcook it. That's pretty much how to keep it moist. Most of this will probably just slough off. There's some, you can see there's kind of a fat vein right there. This is really, really tough, and then this is kind of medium tough, and then this is very, very easy. I could probably just pull that off, but we're gonna use a knife because it's more fun. So we're gonna cut this off real quick. Yeah, you can see. You don't want to cut too deep, and if you have a little bit of fat left over, that's okay too, because it's probably just gonna melt off during the cooking process. This is pretty hard fat, so I don't think it's gonna cook. I don't think that this hard fat's gonna melt off during the cooking process. You can see all that fat in there. That's that's why you have to cook it low and slow. Because you don't want, one, you don't want to dry it out, but number two, since it's such a tough cut, because of all that, how the fat mixes in with the meat or the muscle. Basically, all that fat melts and it cooks the meat inside for us. So that's why we do it low and slow. Get that nice. It's kind of like crock pot cooking. Very, very similar, except we use smoke instead of electricity or pressure. So just keep cutting, and you can see on this side over here, it's nothing like the fattiness over here. This is very, very lean. Good. Back up, Morgan.
What?
Back up. Thank you. Don't want to stick you with my knife here. Very sharp knife. Yeah, this fat's very hard right here. There's no way that this fat would melt off. I mean, I suppose you could try to boil it and get the fat to render that way, and make some French fried potatoes out of that fat. That's how the French cook duck, like confit with fat. So they're basically cooking the duck with its own fat. Well, then you don't have to try it, Luke. But you just said that you wanted to try it. Change your mind? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I won't bore you with cutting the rest of it, but there's one thing. When you do cook ribs, they have this thing called a membrane. The membrane is it's a piece that, like if you ever heard about puncturing your lung, you puncture your membrane. It keeps the air inside the lungs.
I want to see the lungs.
Well, they don't use that. They don't sell us that part because we don't want to eat it. Anyway, membrane, whether it's on cows or pigs, restaurants usually won't take it off because it is kind of a pain, but you really should because the meat is so much better. Like if you leave it on, you can still eat it and it'll boil down to where you can just kind of bite through it. A little crunchy, a little chewy. I don't like that. I want it to be so tender. I don't even need my teeth. So we're going to peel this off.
It looks kind of weird if it gets inside your teeth.
And Morgan, you can go ahead and pause. You can see. Okay, now we're back. We've got the fat trimmed off the top. I took the membrane off the bottom, at least in between the ribs. I mean, you're not going to bite through the bones, so you can keep it on if it just gets to be too much of a pain. Watch out, look at something real quick. You see this piece right here? This is a whole other muscle. And if it looks familiar, that's because you think, remember, one part is the brisket, one part is the plate. Well, right behind the plate is actually the flank. So this meat is basically a flank steak. It makes some really, really good fajitas with it. I'm going to keep it on because I like it. So I'm going to start seasoning it. This is kind of it's light Montreal steak seasoning. Pretty basic. Salt, pepper, garlic, with some other stuff in there. But it tends to work really well with all these beef cuts. We're going to season it.
That's going to be spicy.
No, not spicy. More savory than anything. Got that. And now, when you rub, whether it's brisket, whether it's
No,
ribs,
always on the table.
Hey, quiet. They say rub. You actually don't want to rub. You want to pat it, just like this. That's going to help to push it in, but it's also, if you run your fingers over, it's going to get streaky. So I'm going to flip it over, give another heavy dose of it. This one doesn't need as much because it's the only meat that you're really going to eat is right there, in between the bones. And yep, ready for the fire. All right, go ahead and turn it off. Okay, we are. Been a couple minutes and let the salt get into the muscle a little bit. This is Petunia. She's all hot and bothered right now. But you can see that fire. That's actually it's about 100 degrees temperature-wise here in South Texas today. So that fire is actually going to be way too big. I haven't shut my lid. If you come over here and look at my temperature, I haven't even shut the lid, and it's 200 degrees. So I'm going to probably put this out just a little bit. Shut the flue. There we go. That should be a little bit more. There we go. Maybe an inch open. Not much. It does not take much to get up to 225, 250. So I don't want it to overcook. I'm gonna put that top level right up there. Ow. Sorry. Now we want the big thick part to be closest to the flame. because that should be cooking faster. So the flame is coming out down there, if you can see it, on this side. So put the fatted part right there. And close it up. Oh, let me show you guys another barbecue trick. See how I'm missing a rack right there? Well, what I do, these wire brushes, I mean, these are great. These are actually, this is like a rust scraper, so it's pretty heavy duty. But some of the cheaper ones that you'll get from, you know, the big box stores or whatever, these little wire things, they come off. And you can, if you swallow one by accident, you do some terrible damage. So, how I clean my grates, I should just burn the stuff off. Now, it's not the best flavor by any means, but you won't swallow one of those little metal things and have to be rushed to the emergency room for internal bleeding. So, there's a good trick for you. Alright, so put her on, probably 3.5 hours. I'm going to check it, maybe wrap it. I'll check in, put on more logs, probably every half hour. And then that should do the trick, and we'll see you all in a little bit. Alright, so this has been on for an hour and a half now. And you can see right there at 220-ish. 220, that's good enough. 225 is kind of the ideal. Might just be getting a little cold, but that's why I'm putting another log on. Now this is hot, so I won't mess with it. Wood today is mostly oak. So we grow here. Probably, I think my next one looks like pecan. Kind of old. Neither here nor there. Pecan's pretty good. In fact, I like pecan best. It burns really hot. Yeah, that's pecan. It's very light. There we go. So let's take a look how it's doing. I flipped it. 30 minutes into its cook. You see the ribs are on the bottom now. And let's flip it back over. Oop. One of those ribs is already coming off. You can see this one right here. That one's starting to come off. Now, I'm debating wrapping this really early. And the reason why I do that is because all of that inner bone juice right there, that makes some good barbecue sauce, let me tell you. I think that flank steak might be done that we mentioned earlier. That's gonna be pretty good eating. It's still pretty squishy. Nowhere near the temperature it needs to be. But yeah, all that tallow, ooh, it's gonna be so good. So I'll be back in probably an hour, and we'll see how. I'll probably wrap it in an hour, just to keep all those juices in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so this may or may not be finished. I did it, I smoked it for 2 hours, and then I wrapped it for 2 hours. I smoked it very, very low, so probably about 175, 200 degrees. Very, very low for about the 2 hours. Then I finished it once I wrapped it pretty strong. So I'm hoping that it'll do the trick. Knowing the temperature, it should be above 200. But it wouldn't get past 185 for me. So here's the product. Luke, sit down. So we're gonna try this, but Morgan, come over here real quick. That's our backup plan. if we mess this up, we got those. All right, go back. So you can see I'm gonna take it out. Luke, sit down and be quiet, please.
Okay, I'll sit down right here. I'll sit down right here.
The bones and all of that. Oh gosh, what's that called? The marrow. You know when I said we're gonna keep that because it's good.
What is this?
it boiled out and it's sticking to the paper, or sticking to the foil, which is it's actually pretty normal. So I think I got it. There we go. Pick it up. Okay, move the foil out of the way. No, that did not work. Okay. Yeah, that one's really sticking. Done. Now, a lot of people just, that's it, throw the wrap away. Don't do that. Watch. We're going to take this old Chinese soup container. And all of this juice right here, oh, it's so good. We're going to put that into a barbecue sauce and give it away at Christmas. When people think that that is fat, we're going to take a video of it. It's definitely not fat. There might be some fat in there, but when you freeze it, it'll float to the top, and then you just scoop the fat away. All right, so we did that. Cutting sink. Let's see how these ribs came out. Let's get my knife. Now, this little piece, this is the flank steak. We don't want to cut that right off because a flank steak is different from the rest of it.
I don't want to.
Flank steak have really, really long fibers that you have to cut across the grain. Otherwise, it's just terrible. It's so chewy. Let me get a different knife real quick.
What about this next guy?
Which that's probably not a good sign that I'm using this other knife. But that's alright. We shall see. Yeah, that flank steak right there. That is some great fajita meat if you do it right. So Michelle, you want to try the flank steak?
Very soon. I'll have it at dinner.
No, you don't want to do it on camera?
No.
How do you do on camera?
No? Yes, I think the wife is a little camera shy. Okay, don't touch that. Look, that's sharp.
Not that.
So, there we go. Move that out of the way. So fibers are going this direction, which means you cut across it. I expect this to be pretty tender. Because it's on top, it got a, oh yeah, it's super tender. It's probably even overcooked. As you can see, some of the pieces, they're just falling apart. That usually means it's overcooked, but it's still good nonetheless. So that's a good sign. One part of it is edible. Let's check for the rest. Okay, so the small, like that looked when we first rubbed it, that was all marbling. So we're going to cut it across the grain with some dinosaur ribs. That cut pretty quick. Okay, so that's a good sign. I didn't have to put much effort into that one. Ooh. Let's see. You see it coming off the bone there. You don't want it completely falling off the bone. That's a sign that you didn't do a good job. But that looks pretty good. We're just gonna take it all off the bone.
Why not?
So we don't have to deal with the bones at the dinner table. You can boil them. Some of these you can give to dogs.
Ha!
You can, they love them.
Oh, do you want to give it to, you know?
Don't give pork ribs to dogs, though. Never give pork ribs to dogs. Okay.
Could we give it to, Sea and Savannah?
Why would we give bones of meat to our friends?
Because they have a dog. A very big one that likes chewing.
Yeah, that's okay. So I like to cut across the grain for everything.
Shirts.
And these are short fibers going this way. So, if I cut it like this, it goes with the grain. Which means we want to cut this direction. Oh, that went right through. Look at that.
That's a big knife.
It is a big knife because it's made for cutting big meat.
Like that one?
Okay, so that's the center part of the thickest part. We're going to cut that apart real quick. Give a small piece to Morgan, a small piece to Luke.
Yay!
And a big piece for me. Yay!
Aww.
Okay, these might be hot, guys.
Okay. I'm getting the small one.
Okay, Morgan, just spit it out if it's too hot. So what do you think?
That's good.
This good?
Good.
It's really good?
Mm-hmm. A little bit hot.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be hot. Okay. So pretty good.
I like chewy, so chewy.
I'll say it's well past our dinner time, and we should have been eating an hour ago. It probably needs another hour, I would say. If I'm being really, really picky.
Dad, if we ate it
needs
at
another hour.
sundown, we can
But-
have more time to play.
But it's definitely edible. And it tastes really, really good. It's very peppery from the rub that we put on it.
Do we
It's
have that
pretty
piece?
tender. Don't put your finger there. It's pretty tender. Pretty tender. All right. Well, thanks for cooking with me, y'all. We'll see you next time. Go ahead and turn it off, Morgan.